the GM is George Patton. No, not the World War II commander, not the World War II general. That's a different kind of tank commander.
Hello, I'm Colin.
And I'm Charlie.
And welcome to the C&C Talks podcast, episode 8 of season 3.
Yep, just a reminder, we release episodes every week, and we talk about politics, world events, and sports. It is currently Wednesday, March 6th, 2024, at about 8 p.m. Pacific time.
And as usual, we got a busy week, so let's get right into it. Our top story on the political side, Mitch McConnell is agreeing to step down as one of the top Republicans in Congress. Colin, what are your thoughts on that? Because obviously this is a major impact on the Republicans moving forward, one of the longest tenured members of that party, and has influenced policy in that party for the last few decades.
Yeah, so there's lots of things to unpack here. I'm not sure whether he's going to actually step down as a senator, definitely as the Republican leader in the Senate. His term in the Senate as a senator from Kentucky is not up until 2026. I doubt that he runs for re-election, especially we know his health isn't great. We've seen him freeze up a few times. But I don't know if he steps down before that. There is a Democratic governor in Kentucky who would get to appoint his replacement. However, McConnell did essentially propose a law to the state legislature in Kentucky that they then passed and overrode the governor's veto on, that essentially states that it'll actually be the party, the Republican Party, because McConnell's a Republican, so the outgoing member, his party, will get to nominate a few people that the governor has to choose from. So it seems like McConnell definitely has an exit plan if that he's worked on for a while if he does decide to step down or, dies. But I do not know whether he will continue to serve out his term. And like you said, a long and horrifying term as the leader of the Republican Party. Mitch McConnell will go down as one of the worst senators of all time with what he did. His legacy, he leaves a long legacy of awfulness. Judges is the main thing that he is responsible for. He is absolutely responsible for the mess on the Supreme Court right now, which we will get into later, obviously. Holding up Merrick Garland's confirmation because it was an election year in 2016. It allowed Neil Gorsuch to get onto the court. And then when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died in September of 2020, also an election year, but a Republican president at the time rammed through the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett. Also has essentially led the GOP plan of just packing the courts, which has led to a highly partisan judiciary at this point, also responsible for lots of tax cuts, responsible for using the filibuster to block progress in so many areas on so many key issues, responsible for trying and failing to gut Obamacare. Just a horrific term as the Senate Republican leader. Now, I think it does say quite a bit, though, that whoever his replacement is will likely be worse. The people that it might be, John Thune would be the heir apparent in some ways. He's the number 2 Republican in the Senate. Policy-wise, I don't think he's that different from McConnell. However, my guess is that Rick Scott, he's from Florida. He's currently in his first term as a senator. I would actually guess that he would be the Republican leader next Congress. We'll see. Rick Scott, for those who do not know, he was the Florida governor for a while. He was responsible for the largest Medicare fraud in history, Charlie. Also proposed sunsetting Medicare and Social Security in 2022 when he was the chair of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, the committee who was responsible for Republicans taking back the Senate. He and McConnell sparred quite a bit because Rick Scott's candidates were not good. led to Republicans running the likes of Herschel Walker and Dr. Oz and Blake Masters for Senate, none of whom went at all well, and Republicans lost the Senate. And Rick Scott did not get an opportunity to put his sunset Medicare and Social Security plan into action, at least not yet, Charlie.
No, he didn't. Mitch McConnell, certainly complicated legacy, will be remembered quite fondly by Republicans and very much not so by the Democrats.
So I'm not actually sure that you're right. I think it's really a mark of the current world that we live in, that the far right, which has become the mainstream in the Republican Party, kind of the Trump wing of the Republican Party, they absolutely despise Mitch McConnell now.
I will
especially the
rephrase
House
to
Freedom
the
Caucus.
old guard of the Republican Party, which he is a part of, which is now rapidly being phased out for the new Trump era of the Republican Party.
Yeah, I think that actually brings it's a good point in reference to something that Elon Musk posted on X this weekend, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and seems to genuinely believe that since roughly 2008, the Democratic Party has moved significantly to the left, while the Republican
Are you referring to the image? Are you referring to the post he made where he's talking about there's like the political line, and it's showing the Republicans have actually just been staying, like centrists have been drifting to the right only because the Democrats are going like super far to the left?
Well, he's argued that the Republicans have essentially stayed where they are, which, look, there's no denying that the Democrats in 2024 are a further left party than the Democrats in 2008. I mean, you actually can deny it.
Much so in some regards.
The far left actually does seem to deny it, and they think that causing Biden to lose in 2024 would actually move the Democratic Party further to the left, which is not going to happen. A Biden loss in 2024 would be blamed on the left. It would be seen as the left's votes being essentially ungettable, and the Democrats would try to build a coalition further towards the center, and it would move the party closer to the center, back to the right of the direction that they've been going for a while. But the Republican Party, this is the best evidence that you need that they have not stayed in the same place. Ask Republicans what they think right now, what they think of John McCain, the 2008 Republican nominee. Remember, Donald Trump, the leader of this party, famously said about McCain, he's a hero because he got captured. I prefer my soldiers not captured, and has essentially tried to destroy McCain's legacy at every step, Charlie.
Yeah, I think it is really interesting to see just how much, like, even if he loses in 2024, even if that is the end of his career in politics, Trump has redefined the Republican Party.
Yes, and in a way that is bad for the party, not just in terms of policy.
It's detrimental to everyone.
Yeah, no, they've gone completely off the rails policy-wise, but they also, at least recently, cannot win elections. They just have not won elections. For the
Republicans, it contributes to the extremists, to the rise of extremists on both sides of the political aisle, and his political career will be remembered as an absolute disaster.
Yeah, I mean, let's just run through some of the elections since Trump won in 2016, right? 2018, they lost the House in historic fashion, also lost, I believe, 7 governor's seats and many state legislatures. 2020, they lost the White House and they lost the Senate. I believe he's the only incumbent president to lose the presidency, Senate, and the House in one term, I believe. 2022, when Biden was the president, but Trump was still the main figure in the Republican Party. They way underperformed in the House. They lost ground in the Senate. Trump's has not done good things for the Republicans electorally, Charlie. And it does make you wonder why they continue to hitch their wagon to him. I think it's more about the problem that the party faces is that you need his endorsement to get through a primary in the Republican Party, but his endorsement can sink you in a general election.
Yes, and by the way, just to go back real quick to your earlier comment on you believed that he was the only one who had done that to lose both the White House and chambers of Congress in the same term.
Yeah.
He was the first to do it since Herbert Hoover in 1932.
Yeah, that's not a great person to be compared to in presidential history. Hoover, not exactly well respected, is as far as presidents go, and that's kind of why Hoover and his party did so terribly in the 1932 election.
Yeah, and led to the Democrats and led to 4 consecutive Democratic wins by the same guy.
Yeah, and then Truman, the election after him. Democrats held the White House for 20 years after Herbert Hoover.
Okay, so we do need to move on now, but joining us for the rest of our politics section is our editor and good friend, Zack.
Hey, everybody. It's great to be on the podcast.
All right, so let's get to some results from the primaries. We'll touch on Super Tuesday in a second here, but let's first talk about the results from Michigan. Both Donald Trump and Joe Biden both won their races in Michigan. However, Biden saw a significant challenge from an uncommitted vote bloc that is upset with his policy in regards to Gaza. Colin, how exactly is this affecting him? Why are these people upset with him? And how much of an impact will they have come November?
Yeah, so I'll start with why they're upset with him. It's kind of what you said. They're angry over his Gaza policy. They want him to really be pushing for a ceasefire. Now, one slight problem with their argument, he is, maybe not publicly, and I agree that Biden's messaging on this issue has been very bad, and I can definitely see why the pro-Palestinian movement is very upset with his messaging, but I think actions are really what matters, and Biden has been pushing for a ceasefire behind the scenes. Hamas has rejected a ceasefire many, many times. Now, how big is this group? Well, the Listen to Michigan campaign, which is the group that was urging people to vote uncommitted as a protest vote against Biden, unclear how many of these people are actually not going to vote for Biden in November. Also unclear how many of them even would have voted for Biden in November, even if this Gaza issue was non-existent. But it totaled about 100,000 people. The Listen to Michigan campaign expected about 10,000 people, or so they claimed. Everyone else expected over 100,000 people, or roughly 100,000 people. The Listen to Michigan campaign put their expectations very low so they could claim victory essentially no matter what. But still, make no mistake, this is a good win for that movement. They're going to get 2 delegates at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago this summer, which is a big win for them. Probably not great for Democrats if they want a not chaotic convention. I mean, we all remember what happened in the Democratic National Convention of 1968, also in Chicago, as a group further to the left of the Democratic Party created chaos there, too. So Democrats obviously really hoping that that's not going to happen. That's still a ways away. But I do feel like this group kind of has their priorities wrong, right? I get disagreeing with Biden's Gaza policy. I get thinking that it's too far right. I disagree with you, but I understand that opinion. And I think that a protest vote in a primary is absolutely fine. But in a general election, what you're doing by not voting would be sinking Biden, and instead essentially putting in Trump, a guy who would turn Gaza into nothing. Gaza would be gone. Trump is much closer to Netanyahu than Biden is. Netanyahu wants Trump to be the next president, and Trump his policy with Muslims would be much, much worse for Muslims in the United States. So this just does not seem like a practical effort from the left, and especially if Biden wins without this group of people, they're not really going to be relevant anymore in the Democratic coalition. So, guys, it just doesn't make sense. Zach?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that another important piece of this too is I think the main reason, or one of the main reasons this movement has gained a lot of power is actually because of the media, because it's and I wanted to remind you, a lot of these people actually believe that Trump would be better for Palestine than Biden. I think they've sort of lost sight of how terrible Trump was when he was in power. And I think that's in a lot of cases due to media coverage sort of attacking Biden nonstop. I think
Yeah.
that they're making him seem like a worse president than he really is.
Yeah, I think that that's a fair point, but like especially like the far left, it seems like they really love to blame Democrats for not being far left enough, and therefore won't vote for them, but don't blame Republicans for being even further to the right. I guess because they expect Republicans to be that far to the right, but the
And I think
Republicans are not this picky. Democrats, like the left, is very, very picky. If they disagree on one issue, then maybe they won't vote for them. Whereas the right is like, wait, okay, we voted for Trump because he was going to build the wall. That was his big promise. Wait, he didn't build the wall? Oh no, we'll still vote for him anyway.
yeah. And I think that like the whole logic is flawed. Like the logic is Biden's not left enough, so let's vote for the most far right person we can possibly vote for. Like
Yeah, I mean,
that logic doesn't make any sense.
I think the logic is
really
that
odd.
it would drive the party further to the left, but no, it would drive the party, if there could even still be a party if Trump got what he wants, which is essentially a dictatorship. So even if there still could be a Democratic Party, I think it would actually drive it more towards the center because they see that they cannot work with the left, so they have to instead build their coalition more towards the center. They've got to attract more independents, more moderate Republicans to the extent that those still exist. Right?
Well,
That's what they would have to do. That's the basic math of coalition building.
And I think like it could be good to look at these pro-Palestinian Democrats as these sort of radical pro-Palestinian Democrats as almost like a separate party at this point. Like they're very, very removed from the rest of the Democratic Party, in my opinion. And I think that really this is a group of people that's starting to become defined by this like sort of thought that somehow like the US is wrong in everything it does.
Yeah, and Charlie, I think we were talking about this the other day as well, which is that this, like, is it even worth the Democratic Party still trying to appeal to these people because these people's votes may not be gettable anyway
Yeah,
this
I
election
agree.
at the moment, and like
It's
especially
difficult.
Like look at Dearborn, where the Listen to Michigan campaign is really like taken off. That city has the people there who are majority Muslim. They have a track record of being anti-abortion and anti-LGBTQ rights, which just do not represent the present-day values of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I mean, and I think one of the things that we were just talking about, particularly with a lot of the people who are upset with the Gaza policy of Biden, is this idea of moving the goalposts.
Yes.
Mhm,
We say we want
absolutely.
Biden to do this thing, and then when he does that thing or suggests I support doing this thing, then they say, okay, you're only doing that. We want you to do this, and that cycle continues to repeat as the things that they want him to do would be more and more and more controversial.
I'd also like some of them to take a civics class, just
Oh,
because, like,
absolutely.
I've seen people essentially blaming Biden for the overturning of Roe v. Wade because it happened during his administration.
He has no control over that.
And another thing is like to sort of add on to that, I think that like the Democrats during the 2016 elections sort of were on their high horse, sort of blaming Republicans for being so incredibly uneducated and just unknowledgeable about how things work. And I definitely think that there's truth to that, but I think we're seeing now like this is a sort of virus that has infected the whole country. It's not just Republicans or Democrats. I mean, I will admit, yes, I think that Democrats are generally better educated, but I
Well, I
think
mean,
that
that's just basic facts, though. Like polls
yes,
show time and time again that college-educated voters much more likely to vote for Democrats.
right, right. But I think that it's time for the Democratic Party to start to acknowledge that like this is people are no longer really thinking for themselves. They're not doing the critical thinking themselves, and we have a really big problem in the country right now where people just don't know how to think for themselves.
Yeah, I think a perfect example of this would be something I've seen online, which is that the left really now wants you to boycott Dune because some problem that they have with Timothy Chalamet. But like, there's a large faction of that group that's like, yeah, boycott Dune. I don't know why, but yeah, let's boycott Dune. So, like you said, thinking for themselves is a problem. And I think that media coverage, Zach, you pointed this out earlier, is also contributing to the problem, specifically with the age issue. Like,
Yeah.
the amount of coverage of like, should Biden drop out? Like, is he going to drop out? What happens if Biden drops out? Look, Biden's not going. Biden's locked up the nomination. He's not going anywhere. And there's not that same coverage of Trump's age when he's 3 years younger. So he's still going to be 80 during his presidency, if it was to happen. And like, let's remember, he's shown, I would argue, significantly more signs of cognitively slowing down than Joe Biden has. If you watch any of his campaign events, he is slurring his words, he's mixing up presidents and world wars, and sometimes just forgetting what to say altogether.
And in one of his recent speeches, wasn't it that he sort of implied almost that he thought he was running against Obama?
Obama, yes.
Like,
it is crazy. Charlie?
If that's not cognitive decline, then I don't know what is.
Yeah. Although he's claimed apparently that he's doing it intentionally, which is just
How does that even work?
That's very
I don't. He says because he's trying to essentially be sarcastic, which no. That's just no. Charlie, we should move on to Super Tuesday, though. More primaries. We saw Joe Biden win every single state on Super Tuesday with varying margins, except for American Samoa, which had only 91 people vote. And it
How many
was.
people live on American Samoa?
I don't know how many people live there, but 91 people voted, and 51 of them voted for this guy named Jason Palmer, who I believe is a billionaire. I had never heard of him until I saw that he had somehow won American Samoa. But yeah, he's I think a billionaire who decided to put a bunch of money into winning American Samoa, and he was able to do that.
Well,
If you
good for
remember,
him.
in 2020, Michael Bloomberg somehow won American Samoa, and Tulsi Gabbard came in second. So not exactly the most predictive in American Samoa.
So
It's
it seems
odd.
to me that winning American Samoa doesn't really help your political campaign all that much. But
No, it really doesn't.
I think the bigger story coming out of Super Tuesday is Nikki Haley's campaign ends. She officially declared it suspended on Wednesday morning. So
Yep.
how does her run in this election play into general thoughts on the Republicans, those who were supporting her, and can she make a possible run in 2028?
Yeah, so I think it was very helpful for Democrats that she was staying in the race for this long. Especially, it highlighted Trump's weaknesses quite a bit, right? He was winning by significantly smaller margins than Biden was. He actually lost Vermont. He lost D.C. Trump, he won everywhere else, again, to varying margins. But Haley has dropped out. She has not endorsed Trump.
Interesting.
Which is somewhat surprising, maybe. She hasn't endorsed Biden, and I don't think that's going to come at all. I would be shocked if she did that. But Trump has essentially said he does not want her voters back, which does not seem like the best electoral strategy, considering that they made up a large portion of the Republican primary electorate, at least. Now, Biden has actually said, we welcome Haley voters. We know that we may not agree with you on a lot of issues, but we can think that there is places where we have common ground, and you should come vote for Biden. Now, Dean Phillips, remember him? Yeah, I don't either, has dropped out of the Democratic primary. He actually has endorsed Joe Biden, to his credit. I guess I will begrudgingly give him some credit on that.
Good for him. He gave Biden 200 more votes.
It makes me wonder, though, what was the point in the first place? Did he ever really, think he had a chance? Like, if
Yes.
he did, that's kind of sad.
I don't think he thought he had a chance.
But
I
then
think
why?
I
Like,
think he hoped to expose to the rest of the party that Biden wasn't the right nominee to beat Trump, and that they would hopefully pick someone else. I don't think he ever really thought it would be him.
but who would it be
But
then?
I
Like,
mean I guess the hope
nobody is
I
well
guess
known.
his hope would essentially be Biden was doing badly enough in primaries that like someone like Newsom or Whitmer or someone like that, some other big star in the Democratic Party would jump into the race. Is I think what he was doing, but kind of the opposite proved true of what his entire point
Yeah.
was, that what Biden did very well. He showed that he was actually a pretty strong candidate for Democrats. So the entire reason for him running kind of got invalidated with that.
Yeah. And I was wondering, I had a question. You sort of touched on this like a second ago, but what do you think will happen to the Haley voters? Do you think that it will end up helping Biden or Trump? Because I think it's a really interesting discussion to have. Like, because on one hand, I think that Trump is maybe too radical for most of Haley's base. But on the other hand, like, they're still Republicans, they're still conservative. Like, is Biden it's really a question of who's closer to Haley politically.
I think it can
Like,
only help Biden and only hurt Trump, because most of these Haley voters voted for Donald Trump in 2020, right? So Joe Biden, right? He doesn't need to win like 50% of Haley voters. If he can just pick off like 20% of Haley voters, that might be the end of Trump's election chances, because that's not a small number of votes, and the votes that he won that essentially that Biden would be picking off. And if even more of them stay home, just don't vote, or vote for a third party candidate, that's even better for Biden.
and and then I have a follow-up question, which is to connect this back to what we were talking about earlier. Do you think that like these pro-Palestine people who are inclined to vote for Trump, do you think that will sort of cancel this out? Or
Oh, they're
do you
not.
think
They're not going to vote for Trump. They're not going to vote for Trump. I think that
they keep
I
claiming
think when they
they're
defend Trump, it's only to make it seem like the two parties are the same. I think it's mostly to win internet wars, and it's a very online movement, the pro-Palestinian movement. Um, I think that
do you think
they
that they will
more than
vote at
anyone
all?
makes the mistake of confusing that Twitter is real life. They're either going to vote for Biden begrudgingly, which a couple of them will, I think, and then or they'll stay home or vote third party. And speaking of third party, RFK Jr. really interested in right now in appealing to the rapist vote. It seems
What?
he's now bragging about how he's met Roger Ailes and Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein, and how Bill Cosby came to his house, because that's just a great look all around.
That makes zero sense. Like, it seems like from what I've seen in the past with RFK's campaign, it's it seems like he's made a lot of these sort of odd gaffes that are seem very counterintuitive for a campaign, such as like the whole Epstein thing when he was asked on air, you know, have you have you been on Epstein's jet? And there seems like a pretty obvious answer there, which is no, even if you have, that's not something you say.
Yeah,
Um,
Zach, you give him too much credit, because that wasn't the question. The question was, you haven't been on Epstein's jet, have you?
oh
He's like,
right.
well,
Yeah,
actually,
even
I
worse.
have, which is not great. Charlie, what else have we got to talk about?
All right. Yeah, let's move on away from elections to Supreme Court rulings, which yeah, that's fun. Let's first tackle Trump's immunity case. This was actually, let's handle the Trump disqualification, because I think that one's a lot more cut and dry. We expected the Colorado would have to put him back on the ballot. Supreme Court ruled 9-0, unanimous ruling to indeed put him back on the ballot. Zach, Colin, what are your thoughts?
Expected. Not the right ruling, but expected. None of them would even touch the fact that none of them tried to dispute the idea that he's an insurrectionist. It was all about process. Kind of what I expected. Everyone knows he's an insurrectionist. What I did find interesting, though, is that They handled this very, very, very quickly. Colorado made this decision at the end of December, and they figured this out by the beginning of March. That is what we call expedited review. Now, let's move over to the Trump immunity case, where they decided to take it up on what they call expedited review on April 22nd, and they might rule on it by the end of June, which could push Trump's trial over whether he's an insurrectionist, whether he tried to overthrow the U.S. government, until after the election. And it feels like something that the American people deserve to know. Did Trump criminally try to overthrow the United States of America? It feels like that's maybe useful information when they head to the polls, and it's something that if Trump thought that he didn't, he would want the American people to know that he did not criminally try to overthrow the United States of America, that he'd want them to know that before they make up their mind on voting for him. So that's a sign that he's guilty, not that we needed any more. He's essentially admitted as much. But, I mean, the case is bonkers, right? It's open and shut. Trump should lose this case at the Supreme Court, and I think he will, because they'd really be opening Pandora's box to rule that presidents are immune, but it delays things, and it's just further sign of the corruption within the Supreme Court, right?
Colin, what I will say on this is, if you're trying to become a dictator, the great first step is to make sure the position that you are in is immune to most of the laws.
Exactly.
And I wanted to clarify, this is the immunity case that would, theoretically, if it was ruled in favor of Trump, would basically allow presidents to do whatever they want with no consequences of the law, including like assassinating people randomly.
Political opponents with the military, which is a bold strategy to take when your political opponent is the current president of the United States. Yeah. But
let's get now to the government shutdown, shall we?
Charlie, we're still talking about the Supreme Court here, because I think that this is really important to point out, which is that the American people have very, very little confidence in the Supreme Court right now. I believe their approval rating is under 20%. And that makes a lot of
sense, though.
Even Dean Phillips isn't that low.
Yeah, that is warranted, because they have proven themselves time and time again to be corrupt and frankly somewhat illegitimate. Like, let's remember who these people are. 5 of them, which is a majority, were put on the court by a president who lost the popular vote, and were approved by a Senate that represented less than 50% of Americans, because the Senate is an inherently anti-institution. They have used this power, which is essentially comes with no rules. They can essentially do whatever they want. Unchecked power. The only check is impeachment, and that's never going to happen. They have this position for life. They've used it, essentially, to overturn things that are broadly popular in this country. Abortion rights. They're set to overturn mifepristone access later this year, too. They're set to overturn Chevron deference. They overturned rules that required people to serve LGBTQ people of a completely bogus case based on facts that didn't exist. So it is no surprise that the American people do not trust them, especially when, in addition to all of that, they're all flying around with billionaires who are paying them, and in order for them to rule in their favor. It's not just Clarence Thomas, it's Alito, it's Gorsuch, it's probably some of the liberal justices on the court too. The institution is corrupted at a level that I don't know how it's fixable, because the Supreme Court does not have enforcement powers. The thing that they need more than anything else is the American people to believe in their legitimacy, because they have no way of enforcing their decisions unless if people do not believe that their decisions are legitimate. And right now, for all of the reasons that I've outlined, the American people don't.
Yeah. Well, I think there's another part to this problem, which is I think there's something inherently wrong with our election process, just because there shouldn't be presidents that are able to lose the popular vote, in my opinion. I just don't think that should happen.
Completely agree, especially when they can put lifetime appointees on the Supreme Court, and which, by the way, that should not be a thing either. You should not just get a lifetime appointment to the court, because it is essentially unchecked power at the moment. There's nothing anyone can do about it. except hope that one of them dies and you can get a replacement. That's really the only strategy for getting rid of them at the moment.
And I wanted to, if we have time, just focus for a sec on the Chevron deference thing, because I think that's something that people don't necessarily know a lot about, and
Go
maybe
ahead.
we should sort of talk about what exactly that means. And my understanding of it is that basically, if it's overturned, it will make it impossible for government agencies such as like the FDA and all of the other agencies that are governed that govern themselves separate from the government, as in like they don't have an actual cabinet member that oversees
Yep.
the department.
Yep.
All of those agencies. So this includes like I believe like the DEA and
The EPA,
EPA.
which
Yes,
is the biggest one, I think.
all of those agencies will no longer be able to enforce the regulations that they make.
As if the EPA hasn't been gutted enough.
Yeah. Which means basically if companies see EPA agents come up to their office and tell them to stop doing something, they'll be able to say, actually, no.
Yeah.
And there's nothing the EPA can do because all of the power that these agencies have comes from this Chevron deference ruling.
Exactly.
Yep.
It's a hugely consequential one. I do real quick want to go back a minute before we move on to something that we forgot to discuss with Super Tuesday, which is some down ballot primaries. The California Senate race will be contested between Adam Schiff and Steve Garvey in what was a hotly contested primary, as well as Colin Allred won the Democratic primary for the Senate seat in Texas. He'll face Ted Cruz. And I think we'll get into this guy more next week. But an absolutely insane person won the North Carolina governor primary, a guy named Mark Robinson. Very briefly, and again, we'll get into him more next week. He's a Holocaust denier who believes that the moon landing was fake and believes that LGBTQ people are filth.
So we will get to him, but not right now.
Not this week.
All right, let's get on to the government shutdown. Colin, what's going on with that? For not the second, not the fifth time?
Something like that. Something like that. It didn't happen again. It got delayed a couple weeks, so now the government shuts down at the end of this week and half in a couple weeks, I think. And still, none of them have any clue what they're doing because none of them know how to pass an appropriations bill. So they're just not going to do that. We're still on fiscal year 2023's budget, or in other words, the last time that we passed a budget was in 2022.
But I mean, as you mentioned to me, separate from this podcast, Colin, like this isn't necessarily a bad thing for Democrats if they keep passing these continuing resolutions where they keep the budget, because I mean that was a budget voted in by a majority Democratic.
Yeah, I mean it's not the worst thing to happen to Democrats if they can get through this Congress without having to get a Republican budget. At the same time, it means no Ukraine aid for now.
Right.
Now it's unclear if that would come with the new budget anyway. But really, it's just a sign of deep incompetence on the Republican side. I would say just a deep undesire, I guess, to govern. Like they have no intention of doing that and no clue how to do it, even if they did. Charlie,
it's the most basic function of Congress is
most basic function of Congress. Yeah. Let's move on to Republicans. After this IVF thing in Alabama, Republicans were all like, "Oh, we like IVF because IVF is broadly popular, and getting rid of IVF and a very, very, very bad idea for Republicans. Not exactly what they want to let Democrats campaign on because they saw what happened with abortion. That's still a big issue. So they're saying we're pro IVF. Okay, so Democrats said, okay, in the Senate, we're going to introduce this bill that would protect IVF access nationwide. And they blocked it. Republicans blocked it, proving that they do not care about IVF access, Charlie.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think them attempting to get out of this was a political move, and I think this might end with political disaster for them. And I think this gives Democrats more fuel when they use abortion access as one of their main issues, which they ran very well with in 2022. Very well in 2023. We'll see if this carries over to 2024. But this ruling does significantly help the Democrats.
And
So
Charlie, real quick, with that, just to quickly preview Biden's State of the Union address, this is, I think, expected to be a very big topic at the State of the Union. I think Biden's going to talk about IVF access quite a bit. I know a bunch of Democrats are bringing guests who have had fertility struggles. Those are their guests for the speech. And Republicans, they're having Katie Britt, and someone from Alabama. They view her as a rising star in the party, the state's first female senator. They're having her give the Republican rebuttal to the State of the Union. So both sides seem to realize that this is a really big issue that they really need to message on. Now, Charlie, let's talk about something happening in Florida that is just about as good as anything that ever happens in Florida.
yeah, so out with IVF, in with measles again.
Measles are back. Woohoo! Who doesn't love measles?
How?
And
I mean, how are you this bad at creating a U.S. state that you bring measles back? Are you gonna bring the Black Plague back next?
Oh, they might, because
I know,
here's the
right?
thing. They're anti-vax down there. The Surgeon General is very anti-vax in Florida. He's encouraged people to not get vaccinated for measles because, well, I don't see much measles, which means that the vaccine isn't necessary. Well, here's a thought. Maybe
That's how vaccines work.
the reason that there were no measles was because of the vaccine, and by getting rid of the vaccine, all of a sudden, here come the measles. But don't worry. The Surgeon General of Florida has a great plan. His just genius idea is kids with measles can still go to school if their parents allow them to.
That's a great way
What are
to
they
spread
doing?
the measles.
Florida has become just the most.
It's a joke.
I don't even know if you can compare it with the rest of the country. I mean, what they're doing with education, what they're doing with
It's not
the
education.
rails entirely.
Yeah.
This state is just so broken right now.
You can't read books, but you can bring measles back.
Yeah.
Come to Florida,
You can't read
everybody.
books
We
about
have
the
great
measles.
education for your kids.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's get to the stat of the week this week.
And real quick, Zach, thank you so much again for joining us and providing your insight on
Absolutely.
the podcast this week.
Thanks for having me.
Charlie, stat of the
So,
week.
my stat of the week has nothing to do with sports and has nothing to do with politics. I just think it's funny. If there's one thing that I don't think people in the show know about me, but I know that you and Zach do. You know that I really like Red Bull. You know I do.
Yes.
So
the
I thought it
the
was
drink,
funny.
not the F1 team.
Yes. Okay. I liked the F1 team for a few years. I'm talking about the drink.
Yeah.
So I decided I'm gonna get an 8-ounce one, and I'm gonna see how fast I can drink it. Colin, how fast was it?
It was under a minute, wasn't it? Actually,
Oh,
that
it was
shouldn't be
far
the
less
case.
than a minute.
Yeah, actually, no, I think I could probably drink that in well under a minute, too. I'm going to go with, 8 seconds.
You're close. It's 6.
I don't like that.
Actually, you know what? I'll show you tomorrow. All right.
Please
Let's
don't.
move on to sports.
Yes, Charlie, we'll get to the NBA in a minute, we'll get to some NFL, but we got to start with college basketball, because, Charlie, this is March.
Oh, absolutely. Champ Week starts now.
And we've already had some great games from Champ Week. Great non-conference championship games, too, as several conferences still in the midst of their regular season. But we've already seen a number 1 seed in the Atlantic Sun Conference, Eastern Kentucky, get upset, which was somewhat shocking, but their season's over now, and because of what the NIT has done with not giving auto bids to regular season conference champions who didn't win their conference championship, that the regular season for smaller conferences is more meaningless than ever before. But there's some big games coming up. Gonzaga, though, after a huge win in Moraga, ending St. Mary's' undefeated run through the West Coast Conference. Charlie, they're now essentially a lock for the NCAA tournament.
Oh, absolutely.
And in the women's game, South Carolina still undefeated, but obviously the biggest story, Caitlin Clark now the NCAA Division I all-time scoring leader, breaking Pistol Pete's record that has stood for a long time. Men's or women's leader now. Charlie, she's a star. I mean, in every way possible. I mean, she's got the it factor. She can shoot from wherever. She scores a lot. She's a perfect passer. What more do you need?
Yeah, the amount of energy and the amount of really media coverage that she's brought to women's college basketball has been really significant. And considering that she's in all likelihood going to be the number 1 overall pick in the WNBA draft, which is held by the Indiana Fever, she is going to bring a huge amount of media attention and just attention in general to the WNBA, which I think really needs it right now.
Yeah, Fox has broadcast a lot of Caitlin Clark's games so far this year. Women's college basketball on Fox this year is averaging more viewers than men's college basketball on Fox is this year. Right?
And that is impressive.
That's very rare. What Caitlin Clark has done for women's basketball, women's sports in general, cannot be understood. It is incredible.
Absolutely.
And I'm really hopeful that she will bring that to the WNBA, a league that badly could use more media coverage. Now, Charlie, we turn to the NBA.
Yes. LeBron James reaches 40,000. First player ever to do that. He broke Kareem's all-time points record a few years ago. Now he has 40,000. I just wanted to share this with you. LeBron James got his first 10,000 in 368 games, the next 10,000 in 358 games, the next 10,000 in 381 games, and the final 10,000 in 368 games.
It's incredible what
the graph of his points is linear.
Yeah.
He's going to get he will be like 60 and he'll get his 70,000th point.
It's amazing how little signs of slowing down LeBron James is showing, right? There's a reason that this record is going to stand for forever. It's because no one else has been able to play for the... Well, first of all, LeBron James came into the league at a very, very young age.
He came out of high school.
Yes. That just doesn't happen anymore, but...
Well, the league doesn't allow it anymore, do they?
Correct. Yeah, no, correct. But he has just been able to keep going strong. He keeps teasing retirement, right?
He's gonna play with his son.
We don't know like why. Like maybe he just doesn't want to put himself anymore. That's all fine. But as long as he wants to keep playing, I don't see a reason why he would stop because he is still really, really good. We've never seen anything like this before. And Charlie, as for who could break that record, as a longtime, I'll throw in a reference for longtime listeners of the podcast, it won't be Chet Holmgren.
No, Victor Wembanyama has been insane. The amount of... I was just looking at some statistics.
I want to be clear. This is unrelated. It's not going to be Wemby either that breaks the record.
No. Who do you think it will be, if anyone?
Oh, I don't think it's going to be broken in my lifetime. I really don't.
Yeah, but I agree. But yeah, I think talking about Chet is a great segue into talking about Wembanyama and this battle for rookie, well, quote unquote battle for rookie of the year. Wembanyama has looked great. There was a game, I believe, might have been yesterday, where he had a terrible performance against the Rockets. Sengun just shut him down, dropped 40 on him actually. But up until that point, for the last month, he's just been unstoppable, blocking everything. He has more blocks after February 12th than the Heat did since the beginning of February. That is terrifying.
Exactly. Now, I think that you've mentioned to me that you think that they might give it to Chet just because the team is better. I get that for MVP, but for Rookie of the Year, that just seems like completely silly. I mean, first of all, Chet has the potential MVP on his team with him. And also, like, teams with Rookie of the Year candidates normally aren't very good because normally they were top draft picks, and that means that they were drafted to a bad team, and there's only so much one player can do for a bad team, right? The reason Chet's the exception is because he was drafted last year, and his team has been able to do quite a bit since then, right? He's sort of a sophomore in the league. So I don't think that should matter much. I'd lean towards Wemby at the moment, but it's close. Now, Charlie, I'll let you talk. The one thing I really don't want to talk about, but I'll let you do it anyway.
Yeah. So we had a couple of good games over the weekend. One of the headline games on Sunday was a 2022 Finals rematch: Warriors and Celtics. These two teams not really on the same level this point in the season. Warriors battling for the play-in. Celtics by far the best team in the league record-wise, but tied at 21. The Celtics end up winning by 52. Now, is it a surprise that the Celtics won? No. Is it a surprise that they won by this much? Yeah. Is this a concern for the Warriors? Not particularly. I don't really think this changes much, but 52 has got to demoralize you. Colin, how's your team looking for the next few games? They're playing Milwaukee right now. I think that game is just about to end, actually.
Yeah, it is very demoralizing. Look, I didn't watch the game because
Probably for the best.
I knew what was going to happen. I knew that they were going to lose, right?
The Warriors, by the way, currently are up by 26 on the Bucks, so they are going to win that game.
That's impressive. But by the way, Bob Myers is an absolutely terrible NBA analyst on a game. He's fine in studio, but in a game, it's awful to listen to. And Mike Breen is great, but does not save him. I was listening to the beginning of that game. It's bad. But yeah, I didn't watch this game, this Warriors-Celtics game, because I knew the Celtics were going to win. They're so great at home. They're just a better team. I thought maybe they could make it within 15, though, because like the Warriors have looked pretty good recently. I actually thought that the Warriors could go on a run deep into the playoffs this year. Those are no longer my thoughts, because they were destroyed. And that's the caliber of team. Maybe not quite as high as Boston, but up there. That's the caliber of team that you're going to have to beat in a 7-game series.
Yeah, looking at the standings. I know a couple of the games haven't ended, but you got to get through Minnesota. You got to get through OK.
1 through 8 in the West right now.
You got to get through Minnesota. You got to get through OKC, Denver, the Clippers, the Pelicans can be dangerous. Phoenix if the big three's all healthy. The Sacramento Kings, who gave you a lot of trouble last year.
So I actually feel fine getting through the Pelicans and the Kings.
Luka Doncic. I'm not saying the Dallas Mavericks because it's not the Dallas Mavericks. It is Luka by himself.
I feel fine about getting through that as well. Like there's teams in there that I think they could get through, but
yeah, I think the Lakers are a
second round team. They're a second round team.
Yeah, I mean, because at that point you're going to run into either Minnesota, OKC, Denver, or the Clippers. And I don't see them beating any of those teams.
I mean, I got to see OKC going out early though, just because of how young of a team.
I don't see them beating a team like New Orleans either if Zion stays healthy, which is a big if.
But yeah, it's a big if.
Let's get on to another big if. Where does Russell Wilson go from here? He's going to be cut from the Broncos as soon as the league year starts on March 13th. But let's just review the trade that happened between the Seahawks and the Broncos. I think it's all said and done. The impactful players were Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, Drew Lock, the picks that ended up becoming Devin Witherspoon, and who else am I missing? Charles Cross,
Boye Mafe,
Abe Lucas, I think.
No, not Lucas.
Pick? That was our pick.
That was our pick.
The Broncos get a 4th-round pick, and I don't know who they used it on.
They used it on, I don't remember the guy's name, but he ended up getting suspended for gambling. So.
And Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Is this the worst trade? And they gave him a huge new contract, which now was blowing up in their face as they have to pay him a lot of money in dead cap. Is this the worst trade in NFL history?
Yes, because here's the thing.
It's number 2, in my opinion.
For me, it comes down to them signing him to another huge contract before he played a snap for them. And he didn't play a snap on that new contract, by the way.
No, he didn't.
Whoever the GM in Denver needs to be fired right now. This is the worst thing I've ever seen a GM do. You've destroyed your franchise for a while now. That's $85 million in dead cap space. And Charlie and I are from Seattle. We could have told you, we did tell you, in fact, that this was coming. We saw Russell Wilson's last couple seasons, and we saw the downward trend. We saw that letting Russ cook was not the right strategy. You brought in maybe the worst head coach I've ever seen. Sorry, actually, that's Brandon Staley, but the second worst head coach of all time that at least I have ever seen. And then when that, of course, doesn't work out, and he goes on to the Jets, which is really definitely working out there too. They bring in Sean Payton, who might be the most overrated because he managed to get Drew Brees, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, one ring. One ring. That's it. And many, many, many under 500 seasons. And people still think this guy's a great head coach. He did nothing with Wilson last year, except continue to just be a jerk on the sideline. Made himself into an extremely unlikable figure. Now he has to find a way to win back over the locker room after saying that the reason that they're getting rid of Wilson is because you can't get rid of all 5 wide receivers and all offensive linemen instead, implying that he'd love to get rid of all of them. Now, how are you going to win that locker room back? So I don't know what the end game is for the Denver Broncos here.
By the way, if you're wondering, the GM is George Patton. No, not the World War II commander, not the World War II general. That's a different kind of tank commander. Let's move on now to some more football news. Mike Evans is
a great line, by the way.
Sorry?
That's a great line.
Thanks. Mike Evans is the star wide receiver for the Buccaneers. Has re-signed 2 years, $52 million. As if they can lock up the contract to Baker Mayfield, I think they really have the division in their hands for the next few years. As Carolina's not going anywhere, the Saints are the Saints, and they're never going to go anywhere. And I forgot the Falcons existed.
Yep.
That's some sneaky big news. There was some potential of him maybe going to Kansas City, so that prevents that. Which would have been him going to Kansas City would be a Kevin Durant to the Warriors scenario.
Yeah.
But let's get to some other big NFL news. Jason Kelce has retired, and surely a first ballot Hall of Famer, correct?
Absolutely. One of the greatest centers of all time. An amazing, amazing person too. Just it seems like truly, he is just an all-time great in every way. The game is deeply going to miss him. Philadelphia is clearly already missing. Yeah, not much else you can say.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we wrap up, just a quick review of the Formula One Bahrain Grand Prix. Verstappen won. It's over. Congratulations, Verstappen is your 2024 champion. And with that, I think that'll do it.
Shocker. Like I said, the fact that this sport, that Formula One, Charlie, is so predictable.
I don't get it.
Is why it is so. Is why it is so tough for me and probably a lot of other people to become fans of it.
Yeah.
All right. That is the end of this episode. Make sure you subscribe to the C&C Talks podcast episodes. Available every single week wherever you listen to your podcasts. This is our website, cctalks.com, which has everything you need to know about the show, and call us with your questions at 360-389-2630. Again, that's 360-389-2630. Follow us on Twitter at CC Talks Podcast, and follow Charlie at CC Talks Charlie, and join our Discord server at cctalks.com/Discord. All this information and more is in the description below. I think that our recording software actually recorded the entire time through this time, so
it did.
With that, for our producer Morris and our production designer Zack, I'm Colin.
I'm Charlie, and we'll see you next week.